I think I started TM in 1968. And very early on, somehow I was drawn to reading Maharishi's translation and commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. And the, the way he talked about the meaning of the verses for me was just so simple and direct and deeply seemed to uncover truths of life that resonated with me. So later on in my career in the TM world, I began to memorize some of the Bhagavad Gita in English. Others have done it in English and in Sanskrit. I never learned Sanskrit, so I couldn't do that. But in that memorization process, then those verses would just kind of be companions in the course of daily life. And somewhere in the early 70s, people asked me to start a weekly Bhagavad Gita reading group, which I began to do. And since that time, I've been in at least one Bhagavad Gita reading group every week for all those years. And what that does is it just allows you to see how amazing this document is, this ancient document of a conversation between an enlightened person and a really evolved person, but someone not yet enlightened.
It's interesting because I was in a situation where it's Eastern Europe. We at the time we didn't have internet. It was the early 90s. We didn't have access to books in Hungarian. We didn't have access to books in English either. And I was just hungry for knowledge, and all these little bits of knowledge that I had, I was extremely grateful for. And I was 19 years old. I just started college when one friend of mine who was a student at MIU at that time came home during the summer and gave me the Gita in English.
Mhm.
You know, immediately it became my favorite book. And I read it and reread it, and someone asked me if you were to go to a completely desolated island and they allow you only to take one book, what would it be? And without any hesitation, I said, "Oh, the Gita, with Maharishi's commentary." And I also started to memorize some verses from the Gita in English and also in Sanskrit, because at that time the Gita inspired me to start learning Sanskrit.